to give you a little introduction to the individual reading conferences, which are going to begin in class starting on Monday. The objectives of this video, when you have finished viewing it, you should be able to explain how the reading conferences are going to happen and the kinds of questions and things that we're going to be talking about, why we are having individual reading conferences, and what my goals are for you as readers in my classroom this year. The procedures for a reading conference are very simple. You'll find the procedures don't change. Every reading conference will run the same way. They're going to occur during silent reading time in class every day. They last about 5 to 7 minutes, which means I should get 2 or 3 conferences in each class period. In my smaller classes, I should be able to see everybody at least once a week. In my larger classes, it'll be a little bit further apart from that. I come to you as you're reading, so you won't be moving around. I do ask that you have your reading response log opened and out on your desk when I sit down so that I can take a look at it. And I will be taking notes on our conversation. Don't let the notes bother you. You're more than welcome to see what I record. It's just mainly about the things that we talked about, suggestions I made, and any ideas I have for where we can go next. But feel free to ask to see your reading conference notes. They're not any secret. I have several purposes for a reading conference. I teach reading primarily through individual conferences because I believe that reading is more than reading a passage, taking a test, and identifying main idea and supporting details. And if I'm going to meet each of you where you are and move you forward, I need to know each of you as individual readers rather than classes of readers. So I use reading conferences as a way to gain a clear picture of who you are as a reader in my class. I use reading conferences to understand what you're becoming as a reader. In other words, what have you accomplished? What can you do? What are your strengths? What are your needs? And what can we do together to make you a stronger reader? And finally, I think reading conferences provide me with an authentic, ongoing way of keeping track of what you're learning, how you're moving forward, what you're improving on, and where you need a little support to become a better reader. So I find that reading conferences are just a much more responsive way of teaching reading. I have very particular goals for you as readers in my class, and the big overarching goal is that you actually read for all of the real-world purposes that we all read. My goals for you as a reader is that you read to find comfort in the world, that you read to understand who you are and who you can become, that you use reading as a way to figure out how you fit into the world, that you use reading as a way to figure out how you can best serve the world. My expectation is that you learn to use reading to move you, to make you happy, to make you sad, to entertain you, to educate you, to clarify things for you. And my overarching goals for you feed into those real world purposes. So as we work together, I want you to be able to understand more clearly both what the text says, what the reader's intentions might be, and to understand how the reading impacts who you are. I want you to be able to remember more completely, to make deeper connections, to make real world connections, to remember how the book spoke to you. Another purpose is I want you to be able to extend the meaning of what you read, to go beyond that main idea, supporting details, to what is the writer saying about the world that we all live in. Do you agree? Do you disagree? How does the reader view the world? How is his or her point of view different than yours? How can that point of view expand or enrich your own? And finally, I want to work so that your reading experiences are more memorable, that you remember how the book moved you. You remember the emotion. You remember the connections. You remember the escape. You remember the solutions, all those things that books have to offer you. Why did I go backwards? We talk more about being a wise reader than a good reader because I think the word good implies no mistakes, no problems, and I know that that's not true about readers or writers. I am a very good reader, and there are still books that are texts that are a struggle for me. There are times when I have to use fix-up strategies. There are times when I realize it doesn't make sense and I have to go back and do something about it to fix my understanding. So I like the idea of a wise reader instead. A wise reader is a reader who knows when it works and when it doesn't and how to fix it. The bulleted lists of things on this page in the video are some definitions from last year's kids about how they defined a wise reader. Take a minute, you may even want to pause the video here, read what last year's kids said about becoming wise readers. See how it fits into your vision of what a wise reader does and what a wise reader can do. And then I want you to ask yourself, how is this different from what you're used to thinking about reading? And what does this tell you or imply that reading instruction is going to be in class this year? So you may want to pause the video here for a minute and think about these. No, why are we going backwards? I'm sorry, this is so confusing. Okay, when we confer, the process is going to be pretty much the same. I'm going to come to you. I'm probably going to flip through your reading response log, see what you've been recording and if you've been keeping up. And then I'm going to begin the conference by asking you how it's going. And there's a reason for that. It's not my conference, it's yours. And I want to put what we talk about firmly into your control. I'm interested in knowing what you think about reading and how you view yourself as a reader. So I'm going to ask you that question to open it up for you. So kind of anticipate that when I sit down next to you and kind of think about, are you having problems? How are things going? Is the book working well? Why is it working well? Think about where you want to begin when I sit down next to you. I'm going to look at how much you've read. I'm going to look at the number of pages you're getting done in that 15 minutes time because I'm interested in how you manage your reading life. I'm interested in whether or not you're setting goals for yourself to become a reader that can get more done in the 15 minutes, and I'm interested in whether or not you're pushing yourself to read more in the same amount of time. No, why am I going backwards with this? And this is so confusing, I'm sorry. I'm also going to ask you to tell me about the book you're reading because I'm really interested in knowing how you go about making sense of things. How do you make connections? How do you know if you're understanding or not understanding? What do you do if you're not understanding? Those are all the kinds of thinking I want to know. So that's where we're going to begin. I'm going to ask you about the titles you finished, or I'm going to look at your finished reading because I'm really interested in what you choose to read, why you choose what you choose, and if you need a little nudge for me to maybe read a little more rigorous material or maybe get outside your comfort zone and read some genres that you haven't typically chosen to read. I'm going to work very hard to understand how you interact with text, how you track, how you maintain comprehension, how you fix up things when comprehension breaks down, what makes reading easy for you, what makes reading hard for you. And finally, I'm going to be gathering data to see how I can describe you, how I can talk about what you know, what you're able to do well, and what plans I can make for you to help you become a wiser reader. And finally, this kind of goes back to how I define reading. My whole purpose of these one-on-one reading conferences is to help you dig the hole a little deeper. That was last year's metaphor. Think about it as a swimming pool. My goal is to help you do more than just do the dog paddle along the top of the surface at the shallow end of the pool. My goal is to make you a strong swimmer, to make you a swimmer that can dive down deep into the deep end, so that you can actually dive down deep into the text that you're reading, so that you can really talk to me about what you understand and what that understanding looks like beyond the main idea and the supporting details, that you can talk to me about what it is you remember and why you remember it and how it's changed you. so that you can talk to me about how you can extend the meeting, how you can talk about what points the writer is making about the world in general, what the writer's perspective is, what the writer's meanings are, and how that's changing you. And finally, I want you to be able to talk to me about what makes a book memorable for you. How did the book move you? How did it change you? How did it get you thinking about things you didn't think about before? Remember the WSQ. Watch the entire video, please, not just a little bit. And I know that this one is chopped up a little bit. I don't know why the keynote wasn't working this evening. Please take good notes. I've been watching as I walk around, and a lot of you are not taking good notes. So I am going to begin giving you quizzes, open note quizzes on the videos. If you don't have good notes, you don't have anything to take the test with. Please write an effective summary and write one question. Either a question that you have about the material in the video or a question that you think might push your peers into the deep end of the pool that's going to help extend their understanding of the content in the video. Please remember that a question is not an option but a requirement. If you want full credit for the homework, you have to have a question. Take your time, rewind this if you need to, pause where you need to, review the whole thing if you need to, and it's a little chopped up in the middle. I am sorry.